If you own a Ford with a direct injection engine, your intake valves are getting caked with carbon deposits right now on every single mile you drive. Ford knows about it, mechanics know about it, but most owners have absolutely no idea it is happening until the symptoms hit them like a freight train. Rough idle, misfires, lost power, and a repair bill that can easily clear $800 to $1,500 for a walnut blasting service that you might need to repeat every 50,000 miles for the life of the truck. Here is what makes this frustrating. There is a $50 fix that dramatically slows down this whole process, and it takes about an afternoon to install. I have been doing this professionally for over 15 years, and the difference I have seen in engines that have a catch can versus engines that do not is not subtle. It is night and day. Today I'm going to show you exactly why this problem exists, how a catch can stop it, which one to buy for your Ford, and how to install it yourself without any specialist tools. I will show you real results from engines with and without them, because once you see what is actually coating your intake valves, you will never want to go without one again. Let's start with the problem, because you need to understand what's actually happening inside your engine to appreciate why this fix works so well. Ford's EcoBoost engines, the 2.3 liter, 2.7 liter, 3.5 liter, and the naturally aspirated 5.0 liter Coyote all use a technology called direct injection. With older port injection engines, the fuel injectors sprayed fuel directly onto the back of the intake valve. That constant fuel spray actually acted like a built-in cleaning system, and it washed away oil vapors and carbon deposits before they could build up. Direct injection changed everything. With gasoline direct injection, the injectors spray fuel directly into the combustion chamber, completely bypassing the intake valves. So now the back of your intake valve is completely exposed to whatever comes through the intake tract. And what comes through the intake tract is the real problem. Every engine on the planet uses a system called a positive crankcase ventilation system, or PCV. The purpose of the PCV system is to handle blow-by gases. Blow-by is exactly what it sounds like. During combustion, tiny amounts of exhaust gas slip past the piston rings and end up in the crankcase, which is the lower part of the engine where the oil lives. If you let those gases sit there, they create pressure, they contaminate the oil, and they cause serious damage. So Ford routes those crankcase gases back up through the intake manifold and burns them again inside the engine. Problem solved, right? Not quite. Because those gases are not just exhaust vapors. They carry with them fine oil mist from the crankcase. In a healthy engine, this oil mist is minimal. But in any engine that has some miles on it, or one that does a lot of short trips, or one that spends a lot of time idling, the oil mist content in those PCV gases can be surprisingly significant. And that oil mist has to go somewhere. It goes straight onto the back of your intake valves. Every intake stroke, your engine pulls those oily vapors across the back of the valve. Over thousands of miles, the oil bakes onto the hot valve surface and polymerizes into a hard, tar-like carbon crust. This is not a thin film. I have pulled intake manifolds off high-mileage Fords and found carbon deposits over an inch thick on some valves. You can knock on it with a screwdriver and it sounds like concrete. What does that carbon actually do to your engine's performance? The intake valve is supposed to open and close with precision, allowing a perfectly controlled charge of air into the combustion chamber. When you coat it in a 1/4 inch of carbon, several things happen simultaneously, and none of them are good. First, airflow gets restricted. The carbon deposits reduce the effective opening size of the valve, meaning less air gets into the cylinder on each intake stroke. Less air means a leaner fuel mixture, which the engine control unit compensates for by adjusting fuel delivery, but there is only so much it can do before you start feeling the power loss. Second, The deposits disrupt the turbulence patterns inside the cylinder. Ford combustion engineers designed the intake port geometry very precisely to create specific air swirl patterns that improve fuel atomization and combustion efficiency. Carbon deposits change the shape of that port and destroy those carefully engineered flow characteristics. Third, carbon is an insulator. When it builds up on the valve, it changes the thermodynamics of the valve itself. Intake valves are partially cooled by contact with the valve seat during closing. Carbon insulates the valve face from the seat, which can lead to valve temperatures running higher than designed. Over time, this can contribute to valve failure. The symptoms come on gradually, which is why so many owners miss them. Your truck starts to develop a slight rough idle that was not there before. You might notice small misfires at low load, particularly on cold starts. Fuel economy drops by 1% or 2%, and you blame it on gas prices or driving habits. Throttle response starts feeling a little muddy off the line. None of these symptoms scream carbon buildup specifically. They could be a dozen different things, and plenty of shops will chase their tail replacing sensors and spark plugs before they think to look at the intake valves. I have seen owners spend $600 chasing a misfire that turned out to be completely caused by carbon-fouled valves that should have been caught much earlier. So how does a $50 catch can stop all of this? The concept is beautifully simple. Instead of routing the PCV line directly into your intake manifold, you install a small canister, the catch can, in line between the crankcase and the intake. When the blow-by gases travel through this canister, they hit a series of baffles, mesh screens, or other separation media inside the can. The heavy oil droplets, which are the ones that create the carbon deposits, separate out and fall to the bottom of the canister. The cleaner vapor that continues to the intake still has some moisture and light hydrocarbons in it, but the problematic oil mist has been caught and collected. You simply drain the can periodically, usually every oil change interval, and you keep your intake valves clean. That is the whole system. There is no power draw, no electronics, and no moving parts to fail. It is a passive filtration device, and it works exactly as well as the physics says it should every single time. Now, not all catch cans are created equal, and this is where I see people make expensive mistakes. The budget $10 and $15 cans you find flooding the market are essentially empty metal canisters with an inlet and an outlet. There is no real separation media inside. Oil droplets hit the walls, some stick, some do not, and the efficiency of these units is genuinely terrible. Independent testing has shown these cheap cans catching less than 20% of the oil mist that enters them. You are installing something, thinking you have solved the problem, and still loading your intake valves with contamination. For a Ford-specific application, you want a catch can that has an actual separation system inside, whether that is a stainless steel mesh stack, a coalescing filter, or proper baffling that creates turbulent flow to encourage droplet coalescence. The difference in what these better designed units collect versus the cheap ones is dramatic. The brands that consistently show up at the top of real-world tests for Ford applications are Mishimoto, Moroso, and Bama for road use. For the money, the Mishimoto Air Oil Separator designed for EcoBoost applications is the sweet spot. It runs about $50 to $70 depending on where you buy it. It is specifically engineered for the blow by characteristics of Ford's turbocharged engines, and it has decades of engineering behind it. The Moroso catch can is slightly pricier at around $80 to $100, but it is a legitimate piece of hardware with real separation efficiency. If you are on a genuine budget and want to keep it as close to $50 as possible, look for the JLT Performance Oil Separator, which is made in the USA, tuned specifically for Ford applications, and routinely receives excellent reviews from the Mustang and F-150 performance community that tracks these results over real miles. One thing to understand before you buy is the difference between a catch can and an oil separator. A catch can collects oil mist and requires you to drain it. An air oil separator is a more thorough system that not only collects the oil, but also often recirculates it back to the oil pan rather than holding it in a collection chamber. For most daily driven Fords, a quality catch can is completely adequate and much simpler to install. Air oil separators are more common in forced induction applications that generate more blow-by like highly tuned EcoBoost builds, or track cars that spend extended time at high engine speed and load. Now let's talk about installation, because this is genuinely something you can do yourself on a Saturday morning with basic tools. On a Ford F-150 with the 3.5-liter EcoBoost, which is probably the most common application for this mod, the installation takes most people between 1 and 2 hours the first time. It requires a set of wrenches, some hose clamps, a utility knife or hose cutter, and the catch can kit, which should come with all the necessary fittings and hardware. You will start by locating the PCV hose. On the 3.5-liter EcoBoost, this runs from the valve cover, specifically from the driver's side valve cover in most configurations, down to the intake manifold or intercooler inlet pipe. This hose is your target. You are going to cut it and insert your catch can in line. Before you cut anything, identify exactly where your can is going to mount. You want it positioned somewhere accessible for draining, somewhere that will not expose it to excessive heat from the exhaust manifold, and ideally vertical or close to vertical so that condensate can fall properly to the collection chamber rather than pooling in the hose. Under the driver's side of the hood in the engine bay toward the firewall is a common mounting location that ticks all 3 boxes on the F-150. Some people drill and tap a mounting hole in the firewall itself. Others use existing threaded points on the intake manifold or valve cover. Your catch can kit should include mounting hardware, and there are usually photos in the instructions showing confirmed mounting locations for your specific application. Once you have identified your mount point, cut the PCV hose at the 2 points where you will connect the catch can inlet and outlet. Make sure you cut cleanly and squarely, not at an angle, because a clean cut gives you a better seal. Slide your hose clamps onto the cut ends before you attach them to the fittings, because it is a painful and familiar mistake to forget this step and have to pull the fitting back off later. Attach the inlet side of the catch can to the hose section coming from the crankcase. Tighten your clamps, then route the outlet hose from the catch can down to the intake and clamp that as well. Mount the can to your chosen location, double check all your clamp tightness, and you are done. Start the engine and inspect every connection for leaks. You are looking for any sign of oil weeping from a hose junction or any audible hiss that would indicate a vacuum leak at a poorly clamped connection. On a freshly installed system on a healthy engine, you should see and hear nothing unusual. The engine should run exactly as it did before, because fundamentally, you have just added a canister in a vacuum line. No signals have changed, no fuel trims have been affected, and no sensors are involved. Here is what the results actually look like, because this is the part that makes people share these videos. When you drain a catch can on a Ford EcoBoost after its first 3,000 miles of use, which is approximately 1 oil change interval, you will typically see between 4 and 12 milliliters of collected oil and moisture in the bottom of the can. This does not sound like much, but think about what that means. That is 4 to 12 milliliters of oily contamination that did not go through your intake manifold and did not deposit on your intake valves over those 3,000 miles. Over 50,000 miles, that conservative 4 milliliter figure adds up to roughly 65 to 200 milliliters of captured contamination that never reached your valves. The variance is real, and it depends heavily on engine condition, oil quality, how much of your driving is short trips versus highway, and how often you let the engine idle. High mileage engines that see a lot of stop and go traffic, and turbocharged engines under boost all tend to show higher catch can yields than a low mileage engine doing mostly highway driving. But even the low yielders are catching something, and that something was previously going directly onto your valve stems. I have done back-to-back comparisons using borescope cameras, which are small cameras on flexible cables that you insert through the spark plug bore to look directly at the piston crown and the valve face without disassembling the engine. An engine without a catch can at 40,000 miles on original oil change intervals typically shows visible carbon varnish on the intake valve. By 60,000 miles, that varnish has built up into visible deposits that you can clearly see, reducing the flow area around the valve head. An engine that had a quality catch can installed from 10,000 miles and was inspected at 60,000 miles shows dramatically cleaner valves. Not perfect because no catch can is 100% efficient and some carbon accumulation is normal, but the difference in deposit severity is significant enough that you can see it clearly on camera. We are talking about the difference between a valve that might need attention in the next 30,000 miles versus one that is already restricting airflow. There are a few important maintenance points to keep in mind once you have your catch can installed. First, drain it every oil change, don't wait for it to get full, and don't go 10,000 miles without checking it. Most quality cans have a small drain bolt at the bottom that makes this a 30-second job. Second, inspect the hose connections once a year or any time you are doing other engine bay work. The constant vacuum cycling and temperature changes in an engine bay are tough on hose connections over time, and a loose clamp can introduce a vacuum leak that affects idle quality and fuel trims. Third, if you notice your catch can collecting significantly more than usual, like it is suddenly filling up much faster than before, that can actually be diagnostic information. A spike in catch can indicate that your piston rings are wearing and more blow-by is getting past them, or that your PCV valve itself is malfunctioning and needs replacement. The catch can become an early warning system for engine health. One question I get asked constantly is whether adding a catch can void your Ford warranty. The honest answer is that it depends on how it is installed and how the dealership handles warranty claims. Under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, an aftermarket part by itself cannot void your warranty. A dealer would have to demonstrate that the catch can specifically cause a failure in order to deny a warranty claim on that basis. Adding a correctly installed catch can to a PCV line is a reversible, non-destructive modification that does not alter any calibration data, does not modify any engine management parameters, and does not change any measured performance characteristic that a dealership could detect. That said, some dealerships are aggressive about denying claims on modified vehicles regardless of the legal framework. If warranty coverage is important to you, the safest approach is to document your installation thoroughly and be prepared to remove the catch can before taking the vehicle in for any powertrain warranty work. It installs and uninstalls in about 20 minutes once you have done it the first time. Here is the bottom line. Direct injection is not going away. It is too fuel efficient and too performance effective for Ford to abandon it, and that means carbon buildup on intake valves is a reality of owning a modern Ford with one of these engines. The choice you have is whether to let it happen unchecked or to spend $50 in an afternoon to significantly slow it down. Walnut blasting is a legitimate service and it absolutely works when you need it, but at $800 to $1,500 a visit and needing repeat service every 50,000 miles on an engine without a catch can, you are looking at thousands of dollars in preventable maintenance over the life of the truck. The catch can does not eliminate that service interval entirely, but it extends it dramatically, and the users who have tracked their engine condition with bore scopes before and after installing catch cans consistently report cleaner valves at higher mileage than the same engines running without them. This is the kind of mod that does not give you an immediate seat-of-the-pants performance difference. You will not feel it on day one, and you will not notice the benefit until you either look into your engine with a camera or you compare your valve cleaning interval to someone who did not install one. But that long game benefit is exactly what makes it worth doing. The best time to install a catch can on your Ford is the day you buy it. The second best time is right now. If you found this useful, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we cover exactly this kind of practical, money-saving Ford maintenance content consistently. Drop a comment below and tell me which engine you are running and whether you have already done this mod, because I read every single one of those. I will see you in the next video.